Hello YouTubers, Nicholas Medovich with Strasbourg 1991 Productions here. Today I'll be doing a very own create your own book haul. My friend Josh Caparelli from Yale, CT Lawless, Zach, my partner in crime, and Ari Schneidergans. I want to say thank you for very much for giving me this opportunity. I do actually have a few book hauls. I know if you're not familiar with some of the book hauls that I'm interested in, I think you would actually be interested and involved. But there's actually a few of the book hauls. I think Zach, this one's for Zach Lawless. I'm gonna do my very own top 5 book hauls. All right, the first one is from the bus distributors, the Body Works. They would actually have called. I actually have one from Carpenter, Ward, Wayne, Superior, Thomas, and Bluebird. I'll just give you a few to be specific. The first one is called by Carpenter, which is actually founded, I believe, outside of the state of Indiana, where its headquarters were located until they were shut down because of a roof flaw back in October of 2001. The first book of Carpenter is called Grandpa Was a Carpenter. This was actually not the song, but this is actually a very own book about Kentucky Joe's life in Crittenden. It's about a gentleman named Rodger Bingham, if you remember from Survivor the Australian Outback, with he had an alliance with Mr. Filarski's daughter Elizabeth at the time when they were with Camp Kucha. Rodger, who was just this amazing father figure, well-mannered, well down to earth, living in Crittenden with his family, and also helped Elizabeth's brother Kenny with some financial difficulties. But this is a book about Rodger after Survivor Australian Outback. I mean, not only his bond with Elizabeth, but also his bond with the game, and showing his fatherly affliction, not only with the members of his tribe, but with Barramundi and some parts of the Ogicore tribe. Colby Donaldson, Tina Weston, Keith Famey, etc. That's just the first book. It was based back in the early 2000s, 2001, appropriately, because at the time Carpenter itself was already going out of business because they had to correct the roof construction. Unfortunately, they failed miserably and they were shut down. That's the first book. My second book is by the Wayne Wheeled Vehicles, headquartered in Richmond, Indiana, which is east of Newcastle, which is actually east of Muncie on the highways connecting all the way down to the state of West Virginia. But this is actually an interesting story. I know people are going to sound crazy and kamikaze, but there's actually a name for it. And this is about the story on Dana Carvey and Mike Myers' tribute to Wayne's World. There's a lot of songs like Time Machine by Black Sabbath, which I cannot give you the soundtrack because of copyright claims, but it really understands, how business at Wayne Wheeled Vehicles, or Body Works at the time, was rocking and rolling from the 1960s up until 1992, where they had a 3-year extension, and eventually it permanently shut down back in 1995. Unfortunately, I could not find any books. They've been out of date, or there have been private copies from the 1980s and 90s that are very 1 in 6 octillion of a chance. So couldn't find any books on that. But that was just another second book that Lawless, I think you might find interesting. The third book is called, and I think Zach's going to get a kick out of it, I'm Superior. And this is basically based off of the Superior Body Works. It was a school bus manufacturer, and a lot of them were V6000 gasoline twin-stroke engines, and they came out with the 4-stroke up until its foreclosure by 1980-81, when I believe that the ownership and the I don't know if it's the patent rights to Carpenter or U.S. bus because Superior, I believe, lasted up until the Superior, I believe, actually lasted up until 1990, and then U.S. bus bought it back in 1991, 1992. But in the I'm Superior comics, it's about parts of this is book called it's called Madison Madhouse. It basically it's a fictional, actually it's a non-fictional story. Actually it's actually a location back in 1992. This was a train wreck up in Superior, Wisconsin, about benzyme being leaked into the river connecting all the way to Saginaw. And it was a gruesome story that the benzyme, because of shelling, which is if you're not familiar with railroad terms, shelling is basically a term for corrosion of steel from the inside out. It's an opposite form of corrosion, which basically eats the center of the rail and cracks its way to the outward, compared to cracks outward and works inward. Shelling is a very deadly condition, almost like snakeheads, which is a term for jamming a sharp projectile or object through the underframe of a vehicle. That was caused by strap rail in the 1820s and 1830s, but they've been discontinuing that by the end of 1829 up until 1831. So you may not be familiar with that, but the book unfortunately does not have an actual good ending, but it does not have a sad ending either. That the FRA and the NTSB and FEMA were sued over $500,000, and everything got out of control. The people there were forced to evacuate because of a toxic spill. But then again, that's in a different section of this video. The fourth book, I would call, actually takes place, I believe, in Arkansas, like somewhere outside of Pine Bluff on the former Cotton Belt line. This one is actually a very critical story. It was actually a story of a head-on, basically it's a non-fictional head-on collision on this was actually a story, I think, in the 1980s, somewhere in the 1980s. This is a former Seaboard coastline train wreck, I believe, that had they called it this one is called not psych ward, but but more like a trauma center unit. So this was about a train wreck in Arkansas, I think in 1985 or so. They had two train wrecks. Model description was like an SD, special duty, 6-axle, 45 meaning 4,500 horsepower, -2, the second generation with a new technology. They lost one of those models, an SD60, meaning, again, SD meaning 6-axle, and 60 meaning 6,000 horsepower unit. And they had two GP35s, general purpose, 4-axle, 3,500 horsepower. I think that they lost one of each unit. So nobody was killed, but 3 survived with severe injuries. But again, that's going to be in a different portion of the video. The last section, if I'm actually ready to tell you, it's going to be an interesting one. As I mentioned, this is actually just a revival of Carpenter. It's something called it's called Crowned by Carpenter, but because it was another generation of the back in the 1980s to 1990s. And this is actually a book I would be very interested in. It's about the story of actually in the book of Hamlet, where Richard III was dethroned upon the crown, and he was one of the 3 rulers sentenced to death. This was back in ancient Roman times. I know this sounds a little kamikaze, but Richard III, and in the story of Hamlet, where Richard's character was killed off after he was sentenced to death for the mutiny of 3 other rival kings, and the others were trafficked through hazing and death. So, but again, that's not exactly my nostalgia, but this was just some of the ideas I would give to Lawless, and hopefully Josh and Literary Gladiators can actually be glad. I don't have the books with me, but these are some of my ideas that you may actually find very interesting. So, again, this is just my personal top 5 list. Bluebird and Thomas don't need to run into those because they've already done repeats of those episodes, and they're the only two still in business as of right now. And IC Corporation, which bought out by Amtran, which later bought Ward out in 1993. So, other than that, I think that should wrap everything up. I hopefully hope to hear from all of you, and hopefully I will come up with more book haul ideas soon. All right, Strasbourg 1991 here, 1042, meaning in numeral codes. Peace out.